Okay, so we've loaded tutorial onto our web host, and what do we do next? No, seriously, what do we do next? Hi everyone, just kidding. I know what to do next. The next thing we're going to do is works from the administrator backend, or what we call the backend, or administrator. And to do that, you go to the domain name that you actually registered and you own. Again, if you don't know how to register a domain name, let me know and I will do a tutorial on how to do that. So we just go / and type in administrator. Hit enter, and you're taken to the administrator login screen. Now, you should have received an email with your login name, username and password. So if you just go right ahead and log into that now. Okay, and we're in. And the first thing I like to do is install a standard set of extensions into my website that I like to use as a generic templated Joomla setup. But what I'll do first, I think, just to sort of get things a little bit more user-friendly on your site is just go through the configuration of the site, just to make things a little bit easier so you're not sort of being kicked out too often. And to do that, we'll go into the system menu at the top, up the toolbar at the top, click on the system and go down to global configuration. Okay, now in global configuration there's a number of settings that we can use, and I'll just work my way through those. Stuff that we don't use I'll gloss over pretty quickly, because we don't really need to know too much about everything on this site, but we'll go through it as we hit the site. So we've got site settings. Site name, if you remember the back when we installed it through your host server, you gave it a site name. Well, that's where it ends up in there. Okay, the next one is the site offline. If your site goes down for maintenance and you don't want anyone to look at it, then you click yes for that. And what will happen is that will actually put the site offline, and the only way you can see your front end of your website is to log in. It comes up with a login screen. So if there's no one can log in, then you're the only one who can see your site, and it's kind of handy when you do your editing and checking on your front end if you're logged in to do that way. Offline message, you can make a custom offline message if you wish. Normally it's just a default message, but if you want to, you can use the custom message and then just type into the next box the sort of message that you want. Okay, you can also put an offline image in there if you want to. So it's a little bit of customization of the offline page. Not a real biggie. Okay, mouse over edit icons for modules. I tend to leave that as a default. I don't really care too much about that. The default editor. Now the one that comes with Joomla is TinyMCE. We're going to install another WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG meaning what you see is what you get, and it's a much more feature-rich and functional editor, and we'll come onto that in a later tutorial. Default capture, I tend to leave this unselected because I haven't had a whole lot of luck with the capture, and I prefer to use the plugins that I have and plugins that I have for the site. Hey, feel free to go ahead and try it. I might have a bit of a play later on. If I come up with a good way of working, I'll do a quick FAQ or a quick tip on capture. Default access level, leave that at public. Default list limit, you can set this to whatever you want. If you want a bigger list, just change it to 30. This list limit is generic through your articles and when you do blog layouts, etc., etc. Okay. Default feed limit, if you're running RSS syndicate feeds, you can set your length of your feeds in here to whatever you want, and you can have a feed email in there as well. Okay, search engine optimization settings, search engine friendly URLs, make sure that's checked to yes. Otherwise, when you go up into your URL bar, you'll end up with a great big string of numbers and letters that you really make it hard to search for, especially for the search engines. Use URL rewriting. I tend not to worry too much about that. I'd leave that as it is. Add suffix to URL. No, I'll leave that as off. Unicode aliases. Don't worry about that. We can learn a bit more about that later on if you really want to. Include site name in page titles. Leave that set to no because you'll end up with titles all over your website and it looks really messy. Okay, cookie settings. I tend to leave these alone and just leave it default. Now, metadata settings, don't touch this. Leave this one blank because you should be putting metadata and meta keywords on your articles alone and not globally for the site. So I tend to leave these two blank because it's much better practice to put metadata in your articles rather than globally on the website. It makes it much easier for the search engines to get your pages and your content further up the list. Okay, robots, leave that as index and follow. You can turn it off if you like. It's up to you. It's purely preferencing. Content rights, I don't worry about rights for that. I leave that blank. However, you can do that. It's more of a copyright thing, so I'm not too worried about it. Show author meta tag and show Joomla version. Leave those as default. Okay, you can turn it on or off. It makes no difference. All it does is it shows data on the page and tends to mess up your page a little bit. Okay, so in short, the only thing you need to worry about is if you want to change the name of your site offline fields here, and your editor. The rest of it you can leave pretty much default. Okay, we go into the next tab called System Settings. Now I've only got 2.5 minutes, so this might be a two-parter. I'm running out of time because it is only a 10-minute lesson. Okay, System Settings, leave that as default. Debug system, only if you want to debug, leave that as default. Now cache settings. We leave cache off because it's better to leave the cache off than on with this. And your session settings, now this is what I wanted to get to. Session lifetime is 15 minutes here. Now I've found that if I'm doing a build on a website, 15 minutes tends to log me off all the stinking time, and I hate it. So what I usually do is I usually bump this up to about 60 minutes. Alright, I've had it up to 4 hours and it hasn't had any problems. They tend to recommend against going too long with this because you may end up, this might be some security issues, but I've never had any issues with my websites with having long session lifetimes. But leave it at 60 minutes, that'll keep you out of your hair. Session handler, leave that as default. Okay, and that will just about do for this part one because I'm at 9 minutes, and I'll cover off the next set of tabs on the next tutorial. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next tutorial.